Welcome back. Let's continue from our last video. In the previous video, you saw Sidrain Gauss and Dane met with Count Arkin in his office to request permission to take Dane beyond the castle walls. Their goal was to visit the market and gather essential reagents for potion making. Then the trio of Dane, Herman, and Sidrain left the estate and made their way down into the bustling streets of the town. The mere sight of Dane's appearance caused an immediate stir among the townsfolk as they recognized his identity. Murmurs and excited chatter filled the air with people saying it was young Master Dane. Greetings were called out and Dane, ever gracious, turned to the crowd with a warm smile and a slight nod, saying he hoped everyone was doing well and that he would be back for more snacks later. Beside him, Sidrain watched the lively reception with a thoughtful expression, stroking his beard and musing that Count Sogres wasn't a bad man after all, judging by how he had raised his son. His eyes scanned the bustling streets and festive atmosphere, taking in the warmth of the people and the pleasant weather, thinking that the South really was different with so much good food, bright weather, and kind people, a rare scene compared to the capital. Yes, it's a very warm place, Dane agreed. Then he glanced ahead and asked how much farther it was to the magic item shop. Sidrain gave a curious look, replying not far, but then asked if Dane knew where it was, considering he had spent most of his life indoors at the estate. This was a daunting question, and Dane scratched his head with an awkward laugh, admitting he had honestly never been there himself. What? Sidrain's exclamation was loud and incredulous, drawing a few glances from passers-by. Seizing the chance, Dane turned to his ever-reliable butler Herman, asking if he could lead the way from there. Yes, young master, Herman replied, dutifully guiding his horse forward to take the lead, glancing back as he pointed and said it was just this way, not far now. Time passed quickly as the group made their way through the streets, and soon they arrived at the magic item shop. As they stepped inside, a woman behind the counter immediately lit up with delight, exclaiming if it was really young Master Dane, noting his silver hair and emerald eyes just as the story said. Dane gave a polite nod and greeted her with a kind smile, thanking her for welcoming them and asking how business was these days. At his inquiry, the shopkeeper shrugged with a small sigh, saying it was still the same. Not many people in the territory bought magic items, and most of her sales were to foreigners or anyone particularly curious about magic. Suddenly her eyes widened as if recognizing the older man accompanying them, and bowing respectfully she added that she couldn't believe she had the honor of meeting the former master of the magic tower, Lord Sidrain, right here in her shop. Hearing the shopkeeper's polite greetings, Sidrain returned a gentle smile while Dane blinked with mild surprise, musing that she had recognized him with just a glance, which made sense as there weren't many who had held the title of Master of the Magic Tower in the Althian Empire except this old legend right here. Meanwhile, noticing that the group likely had specific items in mind, the shopkeeper wasted no time offering her assistance, telling young Master Dane to feel free to browse around and to let her know if there was anything he needed before stepping away to let them explore. Since this is your first time in a magic item shop, take your time and look around, Sidrain remarked, adding that he would be having a word with the shopkeeper. Dane began examining the assortment of items on the wooden shelves, ranging from bottles of strange liquids to glowing trinkets. His eyes widened in amazement, murmuring that this place was full of interesting things and that some of them felt familiar too. He wondered if it was because of his heightened magical sensitivity, as when he touched these magical tools he could feel their magical reactions. As the thought passed through his mind, a particularly strong aura pulled his attention. The shopkeeper noticed his gaze and quickly interjected that those were just decorative items. Sidrain, seeing Dane's curiosity, called out, suggesting he come take a look at some crafting ingredients, mentioning moon root as a particularly fine choice. Seizing the opportunity, the shopkeeper chimed in, eagerly agreeing that it was an excellent recommendation and that she had over 50 different potions made with moon root, each one hand-cultivated for top-notch quality. Dane, however, couldn't shake the odd sensation gnawing at him, whispering again that something really felt off, his eyes narrowing as he traced the aura source. Turning abruptly, he finally pinpointed it, a peculiar stone tucked away on a shelf. He thought that stone was calling out to him. With a sudden surge of determination, he hurried over to it, prompting a curious glance from Herman, who asked if something was wrong. Young master. The butler Dane tilted his head, squinting as he examined the object, and remarked that it appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary decorative piece. Dane, however, remained unconvinced, insisting that it felt strangely different. He reached out and firmly grasped the stone. The moment his fingers closed around it, a spark of energy surged through his palm. As he channeled his magic into the stone, the reaction intensified rapidly. Dane's eyes widened as he realized the more magic he poured into the stone, the longer the response seemed to last. He wondered if the stone only reacted to his specific magic, unaware of its true nature. Meanwhile, the shopkeeper, with a cheerful smile, continued to introduce her various products. Curious, Dane raised the stone in his hand and asked what exactly it was. Hearing his question, the shopkeeper turned her gaze to the item in his hand and exclaimed in surprise, asking where he had gotten that stone. Sidrain, the old wizard, also turned curiously, asking what was the matter with it. The shopkeeper, however, waved her hand dismissively, stating it was just a decoration. But Dane grew even more confused by her response, questioning how a mere decoration could react to magic in such a way. She muttered that every time she looked at that stone it made her feel annoyed. Upon hearing this, the old wizard turned with interest, asking if someone had tricked her. The shopkeeper let out a long sigh and began to explain that a few years ago some traveling merchants had paid her with a large package. When she opened it was filled with these stones. By then the men had already left. Having no idea what they were, she had sent them for appraisal, but in the end they were declared to be nothing more than ordinary stones. Not knowing where else to put them, she had simply left them there. Dane pondered silently, finding it hard to believe that the stone was ordinary. However, instead of sharing his suspicions with Sidrain, who stood beside him, he chose to keep the matter to himself. Turning back to the shopkeeper, who noticed that Dane hadn't chosen anything else, she quickly offered a suggestion. She invited him to come her way, mentioning that she had a few rare magical artifacts that might be more impressive. Saying this, she deftly retrieved a roll of parchment and began her enthusiastic sales pitch, presenting a spell-marked scroll called the Name Card Scroll. Ignoring her spirited sales pitch, Dane kept his focus firmly on the stone in his hand. He thought that even though the place was filled with amazing things, the only thing he wanted was this particular stone. Unaware of Dane's thoughts, the shopkeeper continued her enthusiastic presentation, explaining that if one placed the calling card inside the scroll, it would automatically store the desired information, and one would only need to call out the person's name for their card to appear. However, before she could finish her explanation, Dane interrupted her, stating that he would take the calling card scroll and the stone. While the calling card was understandable, Dane's decision to take the seemingly worthless stone left the shopkeeper baffled. She asked in surprise why he would want that useless rock. On the other side, the former Nixian Tower Master Sidrain Gauss also raised an eyebrow, inquiring what Dane planned to do with it. In response, Dane simply smiled without offering much explanation. With that, after gathering everything they needed, the group quickly left the store. As they made their way down the street, Sidrain took the opportunity to comment that he had never expected Dane to be interested in decorations or art, and then questioned if that stone had something special about it. Seeing that the old man had caught on, Dane chuckled softly, remarking that of course he had noticed. Sidrain calmly replied that if not, there would be no reason to buy a useless rock. Realizing he could no longer hide the truth, Dane finally shared a bit more, stating that the stone was definitely not just an ordinary decoration, as it could react to his magic. Hearing this, Sidrain's face lit up with curiosity, expressing his intrigue despite not knowing what the stone was. He suggested that since there were too many people around, they should head back to the estate and take a closer look, to which Dane readily agreed. The group urged their horses forward, eager to return to the estate. Time quickly passed until the afternoon, and both Dane and Sidrain were preparing to begin studying the stone. Dane asked if Sidrain knew what it was. The old man replied, questioning if Dane was underestimating his invaluable experimental tools, assuring him that with these they would know what it was, even though a mage had already evaluated it and declared it nothing special. Dane asked again, and hearing this, the old man's gaze carried a hint of disdain. He scoffed, saying that no matter what the other mage said, it couldn't compare to his tools. He boasted about burning all his money on these advanced tools, which could analyze anything put on them. Seeing this, Dane's eyes also showed a bit of anticipation. He exclaimed that they should try it right away. Sidrain agreed, stating that he was quite eager to just place the stone on there and have Dane channel his magic into it. The old man then placed the stone on a star-shaped symbol. As Dane infused magic into it, the hidden magical circles inside the device activated and began analyzing the object. Sidrain thought to himself, smiling inwardly, that there was something truly special about this, and he could finally puff out his chest with pride. Soon countless energy rays shot out from the star symbol. Seeing the ancient runes within the energy flow, Dane couldn't help but exclaim that it was a magic code. With his knowledge, Sidrain also noticed the anomaly and pointed out that it wasn't just ordinary magic. Looking at the extremely complicated flow of magic that hovered in the air, Dane could only stand there wide-eyed, staring in amazement. He thought to himself that this was incredible, a type of magic that contained laws, structures, and casting methods he had never seen before, possibly even as complex as level 6 or 7 magic. Gradually things began to make sense, and Dane mumbled that the magic hidden inside the stone was the one that triggered this magical reaction. Sidrain smiled and agreed, stating that exactly as Dane said, his magic was the key that unlocked this magic, as it only responded to his specific magic. Hearing these words from the Tower Master, Dane became even more curious, questioning what exactly it was, what kind of magic was hidden inside the stone, and why it only reacted to his magic. The more he thought about it, the more puzzled he felt. Meanwhile, Sidrain wanted to try analyzing the magic. He said he would take a look, admitting that the sealing magic inside was somewhat unfamiliar to him, but since he was the former Tower Master, he would give it a shot. Turning back to Dane, seeing that the old man was taking charge, he asked if it worked, wondering if he might finally understand why his magic was different from others. Sidrain nodded and replied that they could only hope it worked. In another part of the castle, at Arabella's personal laboratory, she was reviewing a collection of analysis reports carefully pinned to the walls. She muttered to herself that as expected it was different, clearly not like normal magic. She noted a special characteristic, a special magical attribute that Dane shared with her that she didn't even possess. However, the results provided no information about what field of magic this fit into. There were no magic reagents, no magic gates, no magic techniques. If it wasn't related to any of these fields, she wondered what it could be, concluding that it definitely had to be related to something. Arabella thought deeply until suddenly a light bulb went off in her mind. She realized there was one field of magic that had been lost and perhaps Dane's magic would fit into it. She hurriedly began to check her collection of magical books, wondering where she had put it. There it was: alchemy, divination, necromancy, and even an ancient magical code. As she quickly searched through her collection, her hand accidentally brushed against a book, sending it tumbling to the ground. Surprised, she picked it up, wiping off the dust from the cover, noting that it was clearly untouched for a long time. Thinking back, she recalled there was a magical kingdom that existed long ago with spells inherited from Archana. However, because they were ancient magic from 2,000 years ago, no one knew how to use them. Arabella chuckled to herself, mockingly saying that ancient magic had disappeared 2,000 years ago and Dane's magic couldn't possibly match it. After laughing, her face grew serious again. She reasoned that it didn't matter as she had nothing to lose and decided to try. She immediately began using her magic to operate a typewriter in front of her. Before long, the typewriter started printing out a piece of paper with the results. Something was coming up. After waiting for the machine to finish, Arabella quickly grabbed the paper and checked the results. She muttered, wondering if it was alchemy, divination, or hopefully not necromancy, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't sure what the results were, but after reading a little, a bolt of lightning struck her mind. She screamed out loud in disbelief. Back with Dane's group, using his magical strength, Sidrain quickly completed breaking the seal. Suddenly, the stone began to shatter into several pieces, making the old man's face light up with joy. He announced that the seal was broken and there was something inside. Dane frowned, agreeing that they should take it out. Sidrain nodded, and then from the fragments of the stone, the old man pulled out a very ordinary-looking bracelet. Dane asked in astonishment, while the old man rolled his eyes in disbelief at the seemingly worthless metal fragment they had been waiting so eagerly for. He muttered that it looked like something anyone could buy at the market, and he had thought there would be something special inside, but there was nothing. He then offered the bracelet to Dane, suggesting that since it only responded to his magic, he should try wearing it. Seeing this, Dane took the bracelet and slowly put it on his wrist. Just as they had predicted, as soon as Dane wore it, the bracelet suddenly emitted a soft blue light, causing the old man's expression to change. He exclaimed that it was definitely reacting now. At this moment, Dane also noticed the change in the bracelet and remarked that he saw some strange characters there, asking what they were. Sidrain squinted his eyes to observe the tiny characters. Dane asked curiously if he knew what they were, and with just a quick glance, the old man recognized them. He stated that these were indeed ancient script that no one could read in this world. Dane asked in confusion what ancient script was. The old man calmly explained that they were characters used by the ancient magical kingdom from Archana. Dane recalled hearing about this ancient kingdom from Archana, remembering Arabella mentioning it when he was young. She had said that during that time even the smallest item was created with magic, but then one day that era ended and all that remained were some ruins and stories passed down through generations along with this magical code. Turning back to Sidrain, seeing that Dane's magic was connected to the long-lost magical kingdom, his face was filled with excitement. He exclaimed that he knew Dane's magic was special, but he hadn't expected it to be related to the ancient magical kingdom, which must be why he had been able to move so easily through the forest these past few days. Dane nodded, agreeing that it seemed the magic from that forest originated from Archana. The old man glanced at him at the same time, hoping that Dane's potential would become even greater. Looking back at Dane after observing the bracelet and feeling it, he shook his head, saying that he didn't sense anything else from it. In response to this, the former tower master, unsure of anything further, could only advise him to study it gradually and cautioned him not to talk about this outside. Dane nodded, agreeing to follow his advice. Just then, both of them suddenly heard a strange noise like something had just cracked. They both asked in unison what that sound was. That's a wrap. The story continues in my next video. Like and subscribe to stay notified.